thanks for logging on to Fantasy Showdown, where our mission is to help you make your fantasy picks. And to do that, we brought in a couple of finger quotes time experts. Our first expert joining us here in Atlanta, Jason Sholin, a multimedia producer. Jason, good luck today.
Thank you.
And joining us from all the way down in Daytona Beach, Florida, and we got to get his title right. It's very important. He's NASCAR's Senior Manager of Sports Services, Mike Ford. Mike, welcome to the show. You've been doing so well lately. I'm sure you're thrilled to join us.
Oh, my God, embarrassing. 2 weeks in a row, double-digit points. If we were using the NASCAR scoring system, I'd be doing top-notch, but 48 points is not going to get it done in fantasy.
Yeah,
so just ignore these next 5 minutes, especially when I talk.
I'm guessing that part of your job as Senior Manager of Sports Services does not include fantasy picks. And with that, let's get to our fantasy results. Weekly standings, we start out with a shout-out to Mustang Motorsports, our fan of the week, with a 317-point performance. That is real good. In first place among us this week, Bill Kim, 176.5 points. Jason, you're thrilled. He's not here, so you don't have to hear about that. Jason tied Vince Cellini in sixth place.
That's bad.
Yeah, oh, it's real bad. And King Double Digit down in 10th. Mike Ford in last place. Now our overall standings, Matthew Dillner, Cam Guy in first. Jason, you're in second. I'm in third. Again in last, it's Mike Ford. So Mike, really struggling here. So we're going to start with our studs, and the only stud here among us as far as points goes, Jason Sholin. We're headed to Kentucky. Who's your stud?
Real quick, we just got done looking at the points. Ford hasn't won a championship since 2004, and I don't think, based on what we're seeing, it's going to happen again anytime
Gloves are
soon.
off.
So, as far as a stud this week, I was going to go with Kyle Busch. Absolutely dominant last year, but he's blown engines in 3 of the last 4 races, so I think engine reliability is kind of an issue with that team. And he's been good, but not great in the mile and a half, so I'm actually going to pass on Kyle Busch this week and go with Jimmy Johnson.
Shocker.
Yeah, a huge surprise here. He was nipped at the line. Very easily could have finished second. David Rudman just nipped the line. He finished third last year. He's been great in the mile and a half, an average finish of 4.5 in the mile and a half. And that's even factoring where he finished 11th in the Coca-Cola 600 with that whole fuel man penalty late in the race. And I know they got some changes to the car this weekend with side skirts, et cetera. The 48 team and Chad Knaus are going to be great at kind of figuring out that new system.
Sure.
So I think 48 team is the team to watch this weekend.
Mike, now that you've picked yourself up off the floor from that shocker, Jason went with Jimmy Johnson. Can you deliver us your stud this week? Who are you going with, bud?
All right, usually I go with loop data all the time. That hasn't been working in the last 2 weeks. I'm going with my gut. If you can see it, it always works. Go with Carl Edwards this weekend. He is the unknown Roush guy this year. Doesn't have a win. We've had 12 different winners in 16 races. I think it's going to be 13 different winners in 17 races. That would be the most since 2003. Carl Edwards, only 2 top 5s. Both of them came in intermediate tracks. Mile and a half Vegas, 2 mile Auto Club Speedway. I think Carl Edwards is your pick this weekend. Roush is always good at these mile and a half tracks. So I think he's the pick this weekend. Finished 5th last year at Kentucky. Breaking
news, Captain Loop Data drops his strategy. That's good to hear. Ford is going with a Ford. Mike, moving along, duds, and we're not talking about you right now, Mike. Not picking on you. Who's your dud this week in Kentucky?
Perfect segue. Yeah, Jason mentioned Kyle Busch and why you would stay away from him, even though he dominated from the pole last year. I don't like how he's going this so far in the late goings this season. Last 4 races, his average finish is 27.0. His best finish of those 4 was 17th last week at Sonoma. So I would just sit him this weekend. Usually a really good start, especially at these mile and a half tracks. But as Jason said, the engine woes kind of worry me, so I'm going to stay away from Kyle Busch this weekend.
Jason, perhaps some insight into why Captain Loop Data only had 49 points last week. He says the dud this week is the defending champ. Who's your dud?
Actually, I'd agree with him. Again, Kyle Busch has been a little shaky. But as far as my dud this week, I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick. He cost a ton of money. He only finished 16th there last year, and he hasn't been a top-tier guy at the mile and a half tracks like a Tony Stewart, a Craig Biffle, and that kind of thing. So I don't think in that regard he's worth the money. 13th on the laps led list this season, so he's not leading a ton of laps. He's finished 14th or worse in 5 of the last 8 races. So again, for the money, he's just not giving you the performance that I think a guy that's going to cost you that much should get you. So I'm going to stay away from Kevin Harvick.
Okay, so Kevin Harvick, your dud, and Mr. Ford, went with Kyle Busch as his dud. Let's go to one to watch. And Jason, back to you. Who are you looking at this week? Who's one that we can kind of dig out of the weeds and get value for?
Well, I think Brad Keselowski is, he kind of surprises you every now and then, gets a win in a place you wouldn't expect. Last year at Kentucky, finished 7th, led a lot of laps. Nationwide Series in 4 starts, I want to say he finished 3rd or better, and actually won in dominating fashion last year. So he's kind of a mid-tier guy as far as cost goes, but I think he's going to give you a good run this weekend at Kentucky.
So Jason picked a guy as his one to watch, a guy who likely makes the chase. Mike, who are you going with as one of your ones to watch?
If you can't beat him, join him. I'm also picking Brad Keselowski.
Oh, gosh, you guys are too agreeable.
For a couple different reasons. He dug down into the nationwide stats. I'm going to go back to loop data. I gotta throw some kind of loop data into this analysis. He had a driver rating of 118.6 last year and a 7th place finish. So that was the 3rd best driver rating in that race, yet he only finished 7th. So his performance was actually much better than his finish would indicate. So I'm going to go Brad Keselowski.
Should I be happy or scared that he took the same guy I did?
You should be real concerned, especially since he couldn't let it go. He had to go back to his loop data, didn't you, Mr. Ford?
It's my comfort level. I love it.
It's a security blanket, that loop data. All right, yeah. Before we let you guys go, we want to remind you to check out the Chase Predictor at NASCAR.com/predictor. It has all your news, notes, and fantasy info. In short, it's the place to be, NASCAR.com/predictor. And with that, I'm going to let Mr. Jason Sholin go and Captain Loop Data down in Daytona Beach. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching Fantasy Showdown right here on NASCAR.com.